The silence of deep space broke with a sound that hadn't been heard in decades. Communications Officer Daniels jerked upright in his chair as the ancient frequency detector screamed to life, its warning lights flashing red across the darkened bridge. The patrol vessel Steadfast had been drifting through the outer rim for 3 weeks without incident, just another routine assignment in the endless black. That changed in an instant. Daniel slapped the alarm silent and leaned into his console, fingers dancing across holographic controls. The signal was weak, fragmentary, like whispers carried across impossible distances. He cranked up the gain and felt his stomach drop. This wasn't random interference or cosmic radiation. This was a distress call. "Captain Wright, you need to hear this," he called out. Anne Wright emerged from her ready room, still carrying a datapad filled with supply requisitions. She'd spent the last hour arguing with logistics about spare parts, the unglamorous reality of commanding a patrol vessel. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her uniform showed the wear of someone who'd spent more time fixing equipment than attending ceremonies. "What have you got?" she asked, settling into the command chair. Daniels routed the signal to the main speakers. Static filled the bridge, punctuated by fragments of words in a language the translation matrix struggled to process. Then, suddenly, clarity broke through. A voice, thin and desperate, speaking in rapid bursts. "Life support failing. 3 cycles no response. Raiders closing. Please anyone. Children aboard. Please." The message repeated, each loop slightly degraded from the last. Wright gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles white. Around her, the bridge crew had gone completely still. "Marathi transport," Daniels said quietly, pulling up the translation analysis. "Civilian vessel. That encryption pattern dates back to early council protocols before we joined. They're using every frequency they can, hopping someone anyone will hear." Chief Engineer Rodriguez pulled himself through the access hatch from the lower deck, grease smearing his cheek. "How far out?" "6 hours at maximum burn," Daniels replied. "But Captain, there's something else. I'm picking up additional signatures near their location. 4 ships, Craven configuration. They're circling." Wright stood and walked to the main view screen, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying while predators closed in. The choice should have been simple, but nothing in space ever was. "We're outside our patrol zone," Rodriguez said, voicing what everyone was thinking. "Technically, this is neutral space, not our jurisdiction." "The Marathi are council members," countered Dr. Okoy, appearing at the medical bay entrance. "That makes it everyone's jurisdiction." "Then where are the council ships?" Rodriguez shot back. "That signal's been broadcasting for 3 days. You telling me we're the first ones to pick it up?" The bridge fell silent. They all knew the answer. Other ships had heard. Other crews had made different choices, safer choices. Wright turned back to face her crew. She'd hauled cargo for 15 years before joining the Deathworlder fleet, seen every corner of civilized space and most of the uncivilized parts too. She'd watched species help each other and abandon each other in equal measure. She'd learned that the galaxy was vast and indifferent, that survival often meant minding your own business. She'd also learned that humans couldn't seem to do that, no matter how hard they tried. "Daniels, has anyone responded to their distress call at all?" she asked. "Negative, Captain. The logs show 17 different ships passed through range of their signal. None stopped, none even acknowledged." Wright looked at each of her crew members in turn. Rodriguez, cynical and practical, who'd seen too many good intentions turn into disasters. Okoy, whose Hippocratic oath extended to every species she'd ever encountered. Young Daniels, who'd once told her about ignoring a training scenario distress call and regretting it ever since. "Here's how I see it," Wright said slowly. "We signed up for the Deathworlder fleet knowing what that meant. Earth didn't get invited to the Council because we're peaceful or advanced or enlightened. We got invited because when other species found us, We were still fighting each other over scraps of dirt and ideology. They looked at us and saw exactly what we were: survivors from a planet that tried to kill us every single day. She walked back to her chair but didn't sit. They called us Deathworlders like it was an insult. Maybe it was, but somewhere along the way, we decided to make it mean something else. We decided that surviving the worst meant we had a responsibility to those who couldn't. Rodriguez wiped the grease from his face, leaving a clean streak across his dark skin. "You're saying we go in." "I'm saying we do what humans do," Wright replied. "We hear someone calling for help, we answer. That's it. That's the whole equation." "The Craven won't see it that way," Rodriguez warned. "4 raiders against 1 patrol vessel. They'll think we're insane." Wright allowed herself a thin smile. "Then they don't know much about humans, do they? Helmsman, plot a jump to those coordinates. Engineering, I want every system pushed to maximum. Medical, prepare for casualties. Daniels, broadcast on all frequencies. Deathworlder, fleet vessel steadfast, responding to distress call. Help is coming." The crew moved with sudden purpose, each member falling into their role with practiced efficiency. The Steadfast's engines thrummed to life, building toward the jump that would hurl them across space. As the countdown began, Daniels managed to clean up the Marathi signal enough to hear more details. 37 beings aboard, shields at 12% and falling, hull breaches on 3 decks, and underneath all the technical data something else. Fear, pure, undiluted terror. "Jump in 10 seconds, the helmsman announced. Wright strapped into her chair and pulled up the tactical display. 4 Craven raiders circling a wounded civilian transport. Bad odds by any calculation, but humans had never been good at math when lives were on the line. "All hands brace for jump," she ordered. Reality twisted. Space folded. The Steadfast leaped forward into the darkness, racing toward strangers who'd given up hope of rescue 3 days ago. Racing toward a confrontation that would ripple across the galaxy in ways none of them could imagine. Behind them, the distress call continued its lonely broadcast into the void, no longer unanswered. Reality snapped back into focus with a jolt that rattled every bolt in the Steadfast's hull. The view screen lit up with the nightmare they'd expected. 1 small civilian transport venting atmosphere through ragged tears in its hull, surrounded by 4 Craven raiders that looked like sharks circling wounded prey. Daniels worked his console frantically, pulling data from every sensor. "Raiders haven't noticed us yet. They're too focused on the transport. Reading multiple weapons signatures, Captain. They've been taking turns shooting it like they're playing with it." Wright felt anger settle cold in her chest. "Tactical assessment. Can we take them?" Rodriguez pulled up weapons status on the secondary screen. "If they were smart, they'd scatter. We've got superior firepower and shielding, but Craven don't think like that. They're pack hunters. They'll probably try to swarm us." "Life signs on the transport," Akoy asked from medical. 37 Marathi, clustered in the central compartment, Daniels reported. "That's the most heavily shielded section, but even that won't last long. Their life support is running on emergency reserves. I'm reading elevated stress hormones across all of them. They're terrified." Wright studied the tactical display. The Craven ships were older models, built more for intimidation than efficiency. They relied on numbers and aggression rather than technology. That made them dangerous in a different way, desperate and unpredictable. "Daniels, can you tap into their communications?" "Already on it, Captain. They're arguing about whether to board or just strip the wreck for salvage. One of them wants to take prisoners for the slave markets. Another's saying the hull damage is too severe, just grab what they can and move on." The casual discussion of lives as commodities made Wright's jaw clench. She'd encountered Craven before, knew their culture treated strength as the only virtue and weakness as an invitation to exploitation. The galaxy had species like them, predators who never evolved past taking what they wanted. Open all channels, Wright ordered. Every frequency the Craven use. Daniels nodded, and a tone indicated the channel was live. Craven vessels, this is Captain Ann Wright of the Deathworlder fleet ship Steadfast. You are ordered to stand down immediately and withdraw from this sector. The Marathi transport is now under our protection. This is your only warning. For a moment, nothing happened. Then laughter crackled across the comm channel, harsh, barking sounds that barely qualified as amusement. A growling voice responded in broken galactic standard. One small human ship thinks to order us. You are far from your territory, Deathworlder. This prey is ours. Leave now or join them. Wright glanced at Rodriguez, who shook his head slightly. They could still back down, jump away and file a report. Let someone else handle it. She'd never been good at walking away. No, she said simply into the comm. Then she nodded to Rodriguez. Chief, show them what a warning looks like. Rodriguez's fingers flew across his console. The Steadfast's forward weapons array, normally reserved for asteroid clearance and debris removal, locked onto the lead Craven Raider. A single shot, precisely calculated, lanced through space and struck the Raider's weapon system. The explosion was contained, controlled, leaving the ship intact but completely disarmed. The laughter on the comm channel died instantly. Next shot goes through your engines, Wright said calmly. Then your life support. Then we start on your friends, or you can leave right now and pretend this never happened. Two of the Craven Raiders began powering up their engines immediately, clearly having no interest in testing whether the human was bluffing. But the other two, including the one Wright had just disarmed, moved into attack formation. They're charging weapons, Daniels warned. Of course they are, Rodriguez muttered. Craven don't do retreat well. The two raiders came in fast, firing as they moved. Their strategy was simple: overwhelm the human ship with simultaneous attacks from different angles. It might have worked against most council vessels, which treated combat as a last resort and trained accordingly. Humans trained differently. The Steadfast rolled hard to port, its maneuvering thrusters firing in sequences that seemed chaotic, but were actually precisely choreographed. Wright had drilled her crew on evasive maneuvers until they could execute them in their sleep. Earth's oceans had taught humanity to fight in 3 dimensions long before they reached space, and those lessons translated well. The Craven shots passed through empty space where the Steadfast had been moments before. Rodriguez returned fire, not trying to destroy the raiders but to disable them. Each shot was surgical, targeting propulsion and weapons systems while leaving crew compartments intact. Second raider disabled, Rodriguez reported. Third one's breaking off. But the fourth raider, the one that had wanted to take slaves, made a desperate move. It angled hard toward the Marathi transport, weapons charging for what looked like a killing shot. They're going to destroy the transport, Daniels shouted. If they can't have it, they won't let us save it. Time seemed to slow. Wright saw the attack developing, saw the math that said the Steadfast couldn't intercept in time. The raider was too close, moving too fast. Helmsman, emergency burn. Put us between that raider and the transport. Now. Captain, we can't. Do it. The Steadfast's engine screamed as every safety protocol was overridden. The ship leaped forward with acceleration that would have killed an unprotected crew. The inertial dampeners struggled to compensate, and everyone on the bridge felt their stomachs lurch. The patrol vessel slid between the Craven Raider and its target with less than 50 meters to spare. The Raider's weapons fired, but instead of tearing through the fragile civilian transport, they slammed into the Steadfast's reinforced hull plating. Alarms shrieked, lights flickered. Somewhere below decks a conduit exploded. Shields holding at 60%, Rodriguez called out. Hull breach on Deck 3, containment fields engaged. We're still in the fight. Wright didn't take her eyes off the viewscreen. Finish it. Rodriguez targeted the raiders' engines and fired 3 times in rapid succession. The Craven ship went dark, adrift but intact. Its crew would survive, but they weren't going anywhere without a tow. The tactical display showed 4 disabled raiders and 1 fleeing into the distance. The immediate threat was over. "Damage report," Wright ordered. "Minor hull damage, some fried circuits, and the galley's coffee maker exploded," Rodriguez replied. "We got off light." Wright allowed herself to breathe. "Daniels, hail the Marathi transport. Let them know help has arrived." Dr. Akoy stood at the airlock, medical kit in hand, trying to project calm despite the rapid beating of her own heart. The docking clamps had engaged with the Marathi transport 5 minutes ago, but the other side of the door remained sealed. She could hear movement beyond the barrier, hushed voices speaking in frightened whispers. "Marathi vessel, this is Dr. Akoy of the Steadfast," she said gently into the comm panel. "We're here to help. I have medical supplies and repair teams standing by. May we come aboard?" Silence stretched for long seconds. Then a voice, young and shaking, responded in heavily accented Galactic Standard. "How do we know you will not harm us? The Craven said they would let us go if we gave them our cargo. They lied. Why should humans be different?" Akoy exchanged glances with the 3 crew members behind her. Rodriguez carried repair equipment. 2 junior engineers held emergency hull patch kits. None of them were armed. That had been deliberate. "We responded to your distress call," Akoy explained. "We drove off the raiders. If we wanted to harm you, why would we bother? You can scan us through the door. We're not carrying weapons, just tools and medicine." More whispered conversation in the Marathi language, too rapid for the translator to parse. Finally, with a hiss of equalizing pressure, the airlock door slid open. The sight beyond broke Akoy's heart. The Marathi transport's interior was beautiful even in its damaged state. Soft blue lighting illuminated walls decorated with flowing artwork, abstract patterns that seemed to shift in the changing light. Living plants grew in careful arrangements despite the crisis, their leaves wilting from lack of proper atmosphere. Everything about the space spoke of a culture that valued beauty and peace. And pressed against the far wall, as far from the humans as they could get, were 37 Marathi. They were tall and slender, with skin that ranged from pale blue to deep violet. Their large eyes, evolved for a dimmer sun than Earth's, were wide with fear. Adults formed a protective barrier around smaller figures, younglings clutching at their parents. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Akoy took a single slow step forward and lowered herself to one knee, making herself smaller, less threatening. "My name is Dr. Akoy. I promise we're here to help. Some of you are injured. Will you let me treat your wounds?" A young Marathi, barely into adulthood by the look of her, stepped forward with visible effort. She wore what looked like an official uniform, though it was torn and stained. "I am Pira. I speak for the passengers. We have wounded, yes, but we do not understand. Why did you come? Other ships passed us. We watched them on sensors. They received our call. They did not stop." "We heard you needed help," Akoy said simply. "That's enough." "But what payment do you require?" Pira pressed. "Our cargo is art and textiles, nothing of military value. Our families have modest savings, but nothing that would justify risking a military vessel." The question hung in the air, exposing an assumption so fundamental that Pira didn't even realize she was making it. In her experience, in the galaxy's experience, help came with a price. Nobody risked their lives for strangers without expecting something in return. Rodriguez cleared his throat. "We don't want payment. We just want to patch your hull and make sure your people are safe. That's it." "That cannot be it," an older Marathi said from the back. His voice carried authority despite the fear in it. "Species do not act this way. There is always a price. Always." Akoy saw a small Marathi youngling, no more than 5 cycles old in human terms, peeking out from behind an adult. The child had a gash across her arm, The blue blood dried, but the wound clearly causing pain. Medical training overrode everything else. "Please," Akoi said, holding up her scanner. "Let me help her, just her. You can watch everything I do. If you don't trust what I'm doing, tell me to stop." The adult holding the youngling, presumably a parent, looked torn between fear and desperate hope. The child whimpered softly, and that sound made the decision. The parent slowly, carefully, brought the youngling forward. Akoi kept her movements slow and visible. She ran the scanner over the wound, showing the readout to the parent. "Minor laceration, no deep tissue damage. I have a dermal regenerator that will seal it and prevent infection. It won't hurt. Watch." She activated the device and held it over the wound. The blue glow of the regenerator matched the Maratha's skin tone almost perfectly. Within seconds, the gash began to close, new tissue forming seamlessly. The youngling's eyes went wide with wonder rather than fear. When it was done, the child flexed her arm experimentally, then laughed. The sound was like chimes in the wind. She turned and showed her parent, chattering excitedly in her own language. Something shifted in the transport. Not trust, not yet, but the first crack in absolute terror. "Others are injured?" Akoi asked softly. Slowly, reluctantly, other Marathi began to come forward. A male with burns across his shoulder from an exploding console. An elderly female with a broken limb from being thrown during the attack. A teenager with a concussion. Akoi treated each one with patient care, explaining everything she did, never moving quickly or without warning. Meanwhile, Rodriguez and his team began working on the hull breaches. They moved to damaged sections, carefully avoiding the huddled Marathi, and started sealing the tears in the ship's skin. The work was loud, involving welding and structural reinforcement, but the engineers kept up a running commentary about what they were doing and why. An hour passed, then two. Gradually, the Marathi began to relax incrementally. Some started asking questions. Others watched the repairs with professional interest. The youngling whose arm Akoi had treated approached her again, this time offering a small handmade bracelet woven from colorful fibers. "Gift," the child said in careful galactic standard. "Thank you." Akoi accepted the bracelet with a smile, slipping it onto her wrist. "It's beautiful, thank you." Pyrrha approached, some of the fear gone from her eyes but replaced with confusion. "I do not understand you. I do not understand humans. The Council speaks of you as dangerous, violent, barely civilized. But you risk your ship, your crew, for strangers. You ask nothing in return. This does not match what we were told." Akoi stood, finished with the immediate medical work. "Maybe what you were told was incomplete. We are violent when we need to be, but that's not all we are." "Then what are you?" Pyrrha asked. Before Akoi could answer, Daniel's voice crackled over the comm. "Doctor, Captain wants you back on the Steadfast. We've got a situation developing. Long-range sensors are picking up multiple ships inbound. Craven signatures. A lot of them." Wright studied the tactical display with growing concern. 12 ships, all Craven military configurations, were approaching fast. These weren't pirates or raiders. These were proper warships responding to what they perceived as an attack on their people. "Estimated time to intercept?" she asked. 23 minutes at their current speed," Daniels replied. His fingers moved across his console, pulling up ship specifications. "Captain, these aren't like the raiders we disabled. These are frigate-class vessels. Each one carries enough firepower to turn us into debris." Rodriguez leaned over the tactical station, running calculations. "The Marathi transport can't jump. Their drive core is too damaged. Even if we tow them, we can't outrun a military fleet." "Recommendations?" Wright asked, though she already knew what her crew would say. "We should leave," Rodriguez said bluntly. "File a report with the Council, let them handle it through diplomatic channels. We saved the Marathi from the raiders. That's already more than anyone else did." Wright looked at Akoi, who had just returned from the transport. "Doctor, Those people just started to trust us, Akoy said quietly. If we abandon them now, we prove everyone right. We prove that humans are just like every other species, that we only help when it's convenient. We can't fight 12 warships, Rodriguez countered. That's not bravery, that's suicide. Wright stood and walked to the view screen. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see the damaged Marathi transport, its hull still being patched by her engineering teams. Inside were 37 beings who had spent 3 days screaming into the void for help that never came, until it did. Daniels, open a channel. All frequencies, maximum broadcast range. I want everyone to hear this. Everyone? Daniels asked. That includes the Craven fleet. Especially the Craven fleet, and any council ships in range, and anyone else who happens to be listening. Daniels set up the broadcast, and a tone indicated the channel was live. Wright took a breath and spoke with absolute clarity. This is Captain Ann Wright of the Deathworlder fleet vessel Steadfast. We are currently protecting a Marathi civilian transport under attack in neutral space. Any hostile action against this vessel or its passengers will be met with defensive force. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. She nodded to Daniels, who added her full credentials to the broadcast, along with her authorization codes and an invocation of Protocol 7, the Council provision that allowed any member species to defend noncombatants in distress. Captain, that just made us a target, Rodriguez said. We told them exactly where we are and that we're not backing down. Good, Wright replied. Now they know what they're dealing with. 8 minutes passed in tense silence. The Craven fleet continued its approach, not slowing. Wright used the time to check their defensive capabilities. The Steadfast was a patrol vessel, built for endurance and versatility, not sustained combat. They had strong shields and decent weapons, but against 12 military ships, the math was brutal. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel sat up straight in his chair, staring at his console like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Captain, I'm picking up new signatures. Human ships dropping out of FTL. 3 of them, no, wait, 4, 5 now. Wright felt her heart skip. Identification. The destroyer Relentless out of Mars Station. Frigate Guardian from the Centauri Patrol. 3 more coming in hot. I can't get clean IDs yet with all the interference. Rodriguez pulled up the tactical display, and Wright saw the dots appearing on the screen. Human vessels, converging on their position from multiple vectors. Within 15 minutes, 6 human ships had formed a loose perimeter around the Steadfast and the Marathi transport. Pira's voice came through on the comm from the transport, confused and frightened. What is happening? Why are more ships coming? Wright opened a channel. Reinforcements. In the Deathworlder fleet, when one ship calls for help, others answer. Always. But how did they know? Pira asked. We did not call them. They monitor our position beacons, Daniels explained over the open channel. When we changed course and engaged the raiders, they knew something was happening. They came to back us up. The Craven fleet slowed as they entered sensor range and saw not one isolated patrol vessel, but a growing coalition of Deathworlder ships. Wright watched their formations shift, uncertainty rippling through their approach vectors. A new voice crackled across the comm, speaking in rough galactic standard. Human vessels, this is Commander Vrak of the Craven Imperial Fleet. You interfere in our operations. You attack our ships. You will surrender the Marathi vessel and depart, or we will destroy you. Before Wright could respond, another human voice cut across the channel, deep, calm, and utterly unimpressed. Commander Vrak, this is Captain Chen of the Relentless. Your ships attacked a civilian transport in violation of Council protocols. The humans who disabled your raiders showed more restraint than you deserved. They could have destroyed your people. They chose mercy. Do not mistake that for weakness. One destroyer does not frighten us, Vrak snarled. Then you're not paying attention, Chen replied. You're looking at 6 human vessels right now, and I guarantee more are on the way. We heard the distress call. We heard Captain Wright's declaration. And we're here because that's what we do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. Wright added her voice to the conversation. Commander Vrak, I need you to understand something about humans. We're called Deathworlders because we come from a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We evolved dodging predators, surviving disasters, fighting for every scrap of survival. We know what it means to be prey. She paused, letting that sink in. And because we know what it means to be prey, we will never allow others to be hunted without consequence. You want these Marathi, you'll have to go through every human ship here, and the ones coming behind us, and the ones behind them, because we don't abandon people who need help. The channel fell silent. Wright could imagine the calculations happening on the Craven command ship, the military assessment of their odds, the political ramifications, the simple question of whether a civilian transport full of artists and families was worth starting a war with humanity. Finally, Vrak spoke again, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. This is not over, human. You have made an enemy today. No, Wright corrected. You made an enemy when you attacked defenseless civilians. We're just the consequences. Station Harmony appeared on the view screen like a massive wheel spinning slowly against the backdrop of stars. The combined human fleet and the limping Marathi transport approached the orbital platform together, an unlikely convoy that had attracted attention from across 3 sectors. Wright hadn't planned on making a statement. She'd simply planned to drop off the refugees, file her report, and get back to patrol duties. The galaxy had different ideas. Dozens of ships from various council species crowded the approach vectors, their crews watching as the humans escorted the Marathi to safety. News drones buzzed around the formation, recording everything. And waiting at the main docking hub was what looked like an impromptu diplomatic reception. This is going to be complicated, Rodriguez muttered from his station. He wasn't wrong. Within an hour of docking, Wright found herself sitting in a council chamber facing representatives from 18 different species. The room was designed for comfort and harmony, with adjustable seating and atmospheric controls for different biology types. Right now, it felt more like a courtroom. The Quellen Harmony's representative spoke first, her crystalline voice carrying a note of disapproval. Captain Wright, while we acknowledge your actions were well-intentioned, you have created a significant diplomatic incident. The Craven Empire is demanding reparations for the vessels you disabled. Wright kept her expression neutral. The Craven were attacking a civilian transport, a Council species transport. Where was the Council's protection? A Cetharian diplomat, his scales shimmering under the chamber lights, gestured with one clawed hand. The Council received the distress call. Multiple species noted it. However, the Marathi vessel was traveling through a known dangerous sector. They accepted that risk. So the Council's position is that if you choose to travel, you deserve whatever happens to you, Wright asked quietly. That is not what we said, the Quellen representative replied. But resources are finite. We cannot respond to every incident in space. Ships must take responsibility for their own safety. Wright leaned forward slightly. 37 civilians, including children, called for help for 3 days. 17 ships passed within range. Not one stopped. Not one even acknowledged the call. You're telling me that's acceptable? The chamber filled with uncomfortable murmurs. Finally, a representative from the Vornathi collective spoke, his voice modulated through a translation device. Captain Wright, we understand human culture values intervention, but you must understand that most species have learned that such actions often create more problems than they solve. The Craven now view the Marathi as associated with human aggression. You may have painted a target on their entire species. Before Wright could respond, the chamber doors opened. Pira entered, accompanied by several other Marathi and an elderly male Wright recognized from the transport. They moved to the speaker's platform, and Pyrrha's hands shook as she activated the address system. "I am Pyrrha of the Marathi delegation. I was aboard the transport that sent the distress call. I wish to speak." The Quellan representative gestured permission, though her expression suggested this was irregular. Pyrrha took a breath and began. "3 days we called for help. 3 days we watched our air run out while raiders shot at us for sport. We knew other ships heard us. We saw them on sensors. They did not stop. They did not even acknowledge us." She looked around the chamber at each representative in turn. "We are not warriors. We are artists, teachers, families traveling home from a cultural exchange. We have never harmed anyone. But when we needed help, when we were dying, only the humans came." The elderly Marathi stepped forward. "I am Tolas, cultural historian of the Marathi people. I am old enough to remember when humans first petitioned to join the council. I voted against their acceptance. I feared their violence, their aggression, their barbaric history." He paused, his large eyes reflecting the chamber lights. "I was wrong, not about their capacity for violence. That is real, but I was wrong about what it meant. Humans fight, yes, but they fight for others. They heard strangers calling and risked everything to help. No other species can say the same." A Cetharian representative stood. "This is emotional testimony, not diplomatic policy. The humans violated protocols by interfering in neutral space." "Then change the protocols," Pyrrha said, her voice suddenly stronger. "Because the current ones mean that only the strong survive and the weak die alone. Is that truly the galaxy you wish to create?" The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species defended the status quo, others questioned it. Wright sat quietly, letting the Marathi make their case. They were more effective advocates than she could ever be. Finally, an ancient being from the Preserver's archive, a species rarely seen in council chambers, activated her speaking platform. Her voice was like wind through caves, old and patient. "I have observed galactic politics for 400 cycles. I have watched species rise and fall. I have seen the Council navigate countless crises, but I have noticed something curious in recent years." She brought up holographic displays showing trade route data. "Since humans joined the Council, pirate activity has decreased by 32%. Not because humans hunt pirates, but because the threat of human response makes raids less profitable. Vulnerable species now travel routes they previously avoided. Distress calls are answered more frequently by all species, not just humans." The data scrolled across the displays, undeniable in its clarity. "Humans did not bring war to the stars," the Preserver continued. "War was already here. We simply pretended it wasn't our problem. Humans refuse to pretend. That makes us uncomfortable because it forces us to examine our own choices." She turned her ancient gaze to Wright. "Captain Wright, your actions were tactically questionable and diplomatically problematic. They were also morally correct. The question this council must answer is whether we value comfort over conscience." The vote that followed was close. The council acknowledged human rescue protocols but stopped short of mandating them. It was, Wright reflected, the most she could have expected. But as she left the chamber, 6 species representatives approached her privately. They wanted to create a joint task force for emergency response, modeled after Deathworlder fleet principles. They wanted to learn what humans knew about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Wright was considering their proposal when Daniels found her in the corridor. "Captain, urgent message from Marathi Prime. The Craven Empire has launched a retaliatory strike against their colonies. They're calling it punishment for accepting human protection." The Steadfast dropped out of FTL into chaos. Marathi Prime hung in space like a jewel, its 3 orbital stations burning as Craven warships pounded them with weapons fire. The scene was being broadcast across Craven space, a deliberate display of power and punishment. Wright's hands gripped her command chair as she watched civilian stations rupture and vent atmosphere. Life signs. Detecting thousands of Marathi on those stations, Daniels reported, his voice tight. They're trying to evacuate, but the Kraven are targeting the escape pods. The tactical display showed the reality they faced. 8 Kraven warships formed a blockade around Marathi Prime. These weren't raiders or even the military vessels they'd faced before. These were capital ships, each one carrying firepower designed to crack planetary defenses. Rodriguez pulled up their reinforcement status. The Relentless and 4 other human ships are 2 minutes behind us. More coming, but they're scattered across 3 sectors. Even with full support, we're looking at bad odds. The Kraven are live-streaming this, Daniels added. It's propaganda. They're showing the galaxy what happens when you accept human protection. Wright felt the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. She'd saved 37 Marathi from raiders. Now thousands were dying because the Kraven wanted to prove a point about power and submission. A transmission came through from the surface, Pyrrha's voice breaking with static and fear. "Captain Wright, if you can hear this, please do not come." The Kraven commander announced that any human intervention will result in bombardment of our cities. "You have done enough. We do not blame you. Please just go." Akoy appeared on the bridge, still wearing her medical coat stained with the blue blood of Marathi she'd treated. "We can't leave them." "We may not have a choice," Rodriguez said quietly. "If we engage, the Kraven carry out their threat. Millions could die." Wright stood and walked to the viewscreen. Another station exploded silently in the vacuum, lives ending in an instant. The Kraven were making their point clear. Weakness invited destruction, and association with humans was the ultimate weakness. "Daniels, can you patch me through to the Kraven fleet commander?" "Yes, but Captain, if you threaten them, they'll start hitting the planet." "I'm not going to threaten them," Wright said. "Open the channel, all frequencies. I want everyone watching this to hear what I say." The channel opened. Wright spoke with absolute calm. "Kraven Fleet Commander, this is Captain Wright. I understand you're making a demonstration. You're showing the galaxy what happens when species accept human help. You're proving that might makes right and the weak deserve whatever befalls them." A harsh laugh came through the speakers. "You finally understand, human. This is the natural order. The strong take, the weak submit. Your interference disrupted that order. Now we restore it." "I have a different proposal," Wright continued. "You want to demonstrate power, then demonstrate it against someone who can fight back. Leave the Marathi alone, face us instead. You offer yourself as a target, 1 ship against 8. "Not 1 ship," Captain Chen's voice cut in as the Relentless dropped into normal space. "Several ships, and more coming. You want to punish someone for responding to a distress call? Punish us. Leave civilians out of it." The Kraven commander's voice carried amusement. "You think to bargain. We have the superior position. We can destroy you and then continue with the Marathi." "You could try," Wright agreed. "But here's what I know about you, Commander. You're streaming this across your empire. Your people are watching. They expect you to dominate, to crush your enemies without effort. But if you fight us, even if you win, it won't be easy. It won't be clean. We're going to make you bleed for every meter of space." She paused, letting that sink in. "And when you finally defeat us, after losing how many ships, after how many Kraven warriors die fighting humans, will it look like strength? Or will it look like we made you pay dearly for attacking defenseless civilians?" The channel went silent. Wright continued, her voice steady. "Or you can withdraw right now. Claim you've made your point. Tell your people that humans aren't worth the effort. Preserve your ships and your warriors for actual military objectives. Either way, you're not touching another Marathi civilian while we're here." Rodriguez had been running calculations on his tactical display. He looked up at Wright with something between admiration and disbelief. "Captain, I think he's actually considering it. The Craven value practical victory over honor, making them fight for a symbolic win might actually work. 3 more human ships dropped out of FTL, then 2 more. The tactical display showed a growing coalition facing the Craven blockade, not enough to guarantee victory, but enough to guarantee a costly battle. The Craven commander finally responded. "You speak of bleeding us, human, but you will die if we fight, all of you. Is that acceptable to your species?" Chen answered before Wright could. "On Earth, we had people who ran into burning buildings to save strangers. We had rescue workers who dove into frozen waters to pull out drowning victims. We had soldiers who threw themselves on explosives to protect their units. Dying to save others isn't just acceptable to humans, Commander. It's who we are." A long silence followed. Then slowly, the Craven warships began to pull back from Marathi Prime. They didn't flee. They withdrew with deliberate precision, maintaining combat formations, saving face while making the strategic choice not to engage. The Craven commander's final transmission was cold. "This changes nothing, humans. You have simply delayed the inevitable. The weak will always need protection. You cannot be everywhere." "We don't need to be everywhere," Wright replied. "We just need to be where we're needed, and others are learning that lesson too." As the Craven fleet jumped away, new ships began arriving. Not human ships, not military vessels. Civilian transports from half a dozen species, each broadcasting messages of support for Marathi Prime. Medical ships, construction vessels, aid workers. Tolas contacted the Steadfast from the surface, his voice shaking. "They came. All these species, they came to help us. Why?" Pira appeared beside him on the transmission, and she was smiling despite the tears on her face. "Because humans showed them it was possible. They showed them that someone answering a distress call could change everything." Weeks later, Wright stood on the observation deck of Station Harmony, watching the first joint exercises of the Coalition for emergency response. Human ships flew alongside Marathi medical vessels. Vornathi rescue craft practiced coordination with Cetharian support ships. Species that had never worked together were learning protocols, sharing knowledge, building something new. Daniels joined her carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Think it'll last, this coalition?" Wright accepted the coffee and considered the question. "Maybe, maybe not, but we proved something important. We proved that the galaxy doesn't have to be every species for itself, that protecting each other isn't weakness or stupidity, it's civilization." On the practice range, a Marathi medical ship successfully completed a rescue simulation while human vessels provided cover. The observers from a dozen species watched and took notes. Some would join the coalition. Others would create their own versions. The idea was spreading like ripples across a pond. "The Craven were right about one thing," Wright said quietly. "We can't be everywhere. We can't save everyone. But we can show the galaxy what's possible when someone cares enough to try." Daniels raised his coffee cup in a small salute. "To Deathworlders, then, and the galaxy we're building." Wright touched her cup to his. "To everyone who hears a call for help and decides to answer." Below them, the coalition continued their training, imperfect and awkward but learning. And somewhere in deep space, another distress call went out into the void. This time, it was answered by a mixed crew, human and non-human together, racing towards someone who needed help. The galaxy was changing, one rescue at a time.